The late December wind howled through Sable Hollow like a wounded animal, driving sheets of snow between the weathered buildings that lined Main Street. The 447 from Denver was 3 hours late, its black engine heaving great clouds of steam into the gray afternoon sky as it finally pulled into the station. Ella Grace Whitlow stood at the top of the passenger car steps, her gloved hand gripping the cold metal rail. Below her, the platform stretched empty save for a few scattered souls hurrying away from the weather. No one waited. No familiar face searched the windows for her arrival. The telegram she'd sent from Kansas City had gone unanswered, but she'd come anyway, clinging to promises made in warmer days. She was tall for a woman, nearly 5 feet 8 inches in her traveling boots, with auburn hair pinned severely beneath a practical gray bonnet. Her woolen traveling dress, once fine navy blue, showed the wear of too many miles. In her right hand, she clutched a carpet bag containing everything she owned. In her left, she held the letter that had brought her here, now 3 months old and soft from folding. "Ma'am," the conductor touched her elbow gently. "This is your stop. Can't hold the train much longer in this weather." Ella descended into the swirling snow. Her boots found the icy platform, and she steadied herself against the wind. Behind her, the train's whistle shrieked, and the great machine lurched forward, leaving her alone with her decision. The station house door hung crooked on its hinges. Inside, a pot-bellied stove struggled against the cold. The station master, a thin man with rheumy eyes, looked up from his ledger. "Help you, miss?" "I'm looking for Mr. James Whitlow," she said, using the name that still felt strange on her tongue. "He was to meet me." The old man's face shifted, something between pity and discomfort crossing his features. "Whitlow, you say?" He scratched at his gray whiskers. "Well now, I hate to be the bearer of ill news, but Jim Whitlow left town near about 6 weeks past. Heard he took work with the railroad, heading west to California." The words struck her like physical blows, but Ella kept her spine straight. She'd learned long ago that showing weakness in a frontier town invited worse troubles than loneliness. "I see." Her voice remained steady. "Might you recommend lodging for the night?" "I misses. Henley runs a respectable boarding house 2 blocks down. Tell her Amos sent you." He paused, studying her with the frank curiosity of small towns. "You kin to Jim?" "His fiancée," she said simply, though the word now tasted of ash. Amos nodded slowly. "Well then, I'm right sorry. Mrs. Henley will see you proper. She's good people." Ella thanked him and stepped back into the storm. The wind cut through her traveling cloak, finding every gap in the wool. She lifted her bag and began walking, counting doorways in the fading light. The boarding house sat between a shuttered mercantile and a leather goods shop, its painted sign swinging violently in the wind. Henley's clean beds, hot meals. The door opened to warmth and the smell of beef stew. A stout woman in her 50s emerged from the back, wiping her hands on a flour-dusted apron. "Lord have mercy. Child, you're half frozen? Come in, come in." "Mrs." Henley bustled forward, taking Ella's elbow and guiding her toward the parlor stove. "Amos called ahead, said you'd be coming." Ella hadn't seen the station master make any call, but she appreciated the kindness of the lie. "Thank you. I need a room, if you have one." "Course I do. Quiet time of year, what with the weather." "Mrs." Henley's keen eyes took in Ella's traveling dress, the quality of the fabric despite its wear, the careful mending at the cuffs. "You've come a long way." "St. Louis," Ella admitted, warming her hands at the stove. "Alone." "Yes." "Mrs." Henley made a small sound of disapproval. "Well, you're here now and safe. That's what matters. Room's $1 a week, includes breakfast and supper. Lunch is extra if you need it." Ella reached into her bag, carefully counting out coins. She had $47 to her name, her savings from 2 years of seamstress work, meant to start a new life with James. Now it would have to stretch until she found work. "First week," she said, handing over the money. "Mrs." Henley pocketed the coins. "You'll be wanting supper soon. I serve at 6 sharp. Your room's upstairs, last door on the right, warmest in the house. Catches the heat from the kitchen chimney." The room was small but clean, with a narrow iron bed, a washstand, and a single chair by the window. Ella set down her bag and sat on the bed's edge, finally allowing her shoulders to sag. Outside, the storm gathered strength, rattling the window in its frame. She pulled James's letter from her pocket, though she knew every word by heart. His promises of a home, of the life they'd build together in this raw Colorado town. He'd written of the opportunities, the clean air, the mountains visible on clear days. He'd signed it, "Your devoted James," and sealed it with wax. 6 weeks. He'd left 6 weeks ago, probably before her last letter reached him saying she was coming, or perhaps because of it. Ella folded the letter and placed it in the drawer of the bedside table. Then she unpinned her hair, letting the auburn waves fall past her shoulders, and made herself a promise in the fading light. She had given her word once, long ago, that she would save herself for her wedding night. That promise had been to James, yes, but more importantly to herself, to the girl who believed in forever, in patient love, in men who waited. James hadn't waited, but the promise remained. Not out of hope for James's return. That dream lay buried in the drawer with his letter. No, she would keep it because it was hers to keep, because her body and her choices belonged to no one but herself. No man in this town or any other would have her simply because she was alone, or desperate, or in need of protection. She would survive on her own terms. The dinner bell rang from downstairs. Ella repinned her hair, smoothed her dress, and prepared to face whatever came next. In the hallway, she passed a mirror and paused. The woman looking back at her had shadows under her green eyes and a firm set to her jaw that hadn't been there in St. Louis. "No one," she whispered to her reflection. "Not until I choose, not until I'm ready, maybe not ever." Downstairs, the dining room held a long table where several boarders already gathered, men mostly, a telegraph operator, 2 miners in from the camps, a traveling merchant. They looked up as she entered, their eyes holding the calculating interest of those who measured every newcomer. Ella took a seat at the far end, near an elderly woman who introduced herself as Miss Prudence Shaw, the school teacher. Throughout the meal, Ella felt the weight of the men's glances, heard the speculative murmur of their voices. A young woman alone in a frontier town was either looking for a husband or looking for trouble. In their estimation, she was looking for neither. After supper, she helped Mrs. Henley clear the dishes despite the proprietress's protests. "You don't have to do that, child. You're a paying guest." "I prefer to be useful," Ella replied, stacking plates with practiced efficiency. "I'm a seamstress by trade. If you know anyone needing mending or new clothes, I'd be grateful for the work." "Mrs." Henley studied her with newfound respect. "That I do. The cowboys from the Bar C Ranch are always tearing something, and the ladies in town complain we don't have a proper dressmaker since Mrs. Olson moved back east. I can do both, mending and fine work. I'll spread the word. Folks'll be glad to hear it." That night, Ella lay in the narrow bed listening to the storm rage outside. Somewhere in California. James was perhaps thinking of her, perhaps not. It didn't matter anymore. She'd crossed half a continent for a promise already broken. But she was here now, and here she would make her stand. Not as James Whitlow's abandoned fiancée, not as a woman seeking protection or provision through marriage, but as Ella Grace Whitlow, seamstress, survivor, keeper of her own promises. The wind howled louder, and snow piled against the window. Winter in Sable Hollow would be long and hard, but she'd survived worse than weather. She'd survived betrayal, abandonment, and the death of dreams. Tomorrow she would hang out her shingle. Tomorrow she would begin again. Tonight, she would sleep alone in a cold bed in a strange town, holding fast to the only thing she had left, the promise that her first night, whenever and if ever it came, would be her choice alone. No one else's, no matter how long the winter, no matter how deep the loneliness. No one. The storm had quieted by morning, leaving Sable Hollow buried under 2 feet of fresh snow. Ella rose early, her breath visible in the cold room as she dressed quickly and made her way downstairs. The dining room was empty save for Mrs. Henley, who was setting out biscuits and gravy. "You're up with the chickens," the older woman observed. "Coffee's hot." "Thank you. I thought I'd inquire about renting a small space for my work. Perhaps you know of something suitable." Mrs. Henley poured coffee into a thick ceramic mug. "Matter of fact, I might, but finish your breakfast first. No good conducting business on an empty stomach." Ella had just buttered her second biscuit when the front door opened, bringing a gust of cold air and the sound of stamping boots. A man's voice, deep and measured, carried from the entryway. "Mrs. Henley, I've got that leather you ordered." "In here, Colt, Mrs." Henley called back. The man who entered had to duck slightly beneath the door frame. He stood well over 6 feet, broad-shouldered in a heavy sheepskin coat dusted with snow. Dark hair curled slightly where it met his collar, and his face bore the weathered tan of someone who lived beneath open skies. But it was his eyes that made Ella's hand pause halfway to her coffee cup, gray as winter storms, steady and watchful. He carried a wrapped bundle, which he set carefully on the side table. His gaze found Ella, lingered for a moment longer than politeness required, then returned to Mrs. Henley. 12 pieces, as you asked. Samuel said to tell you he'll have the rest by week's end." "That's fine. Colt, have you eaten?" "There's plenty." "Thank you, ma'am, but no, I need to get back." He paused, his attention returning to Ella with a directness that might have been rude in St. Louis society but seemed merely honest here. "I don't believe we've met." "This is Miss Whitlow, Mrs. Henley provided. She's just arrived from St. Louis. She's a seamstress, looking to set up shop." Colt McCade touched the brim of his hat in greeting. "Miss Whitlow." His voice held no trace of the casual familiarity she'd already encountered from other men in town. Just acknowledgement, respectful distance. "Mr. McCade." Ella inclined her head slightly. "You looking for workspace?" he asked. "I am." He considered this, snow melting from his shoulders onto Mrs. Henley's clean floor. "There's a room above the leather shop. Samuel's been using it for storage, but it's got good light. Street access. He might rent it reasonable." "That's kind of you to mention." "Just practical. Town needs a seamstress. Samuel needs rent money." He shifted the bundle under his arm. "I'll tell him you're interested. If you like." "I would appreciate that." He studied her for another moment, and Ella had the strange sensation of being truly seen, not as a pretty face or an available woman, but as a person making their way in the world. Then he turned to leave, pausing at the doorway. "If you need a horse for getting around town or making deliveries, let me know. I'll set aside a gentle one for you to choose yourself." The offer was so unexpected, so carefully worded to preserve her independence, that Ella found herself momentarily speechless. By the time she formulated a response, he was gone, the door closing quietly behind him. "Well, Mrs. Henley said after a moment, a speculative note in her voice. "That's interesting. What is—" Colt McCade doesn't usually talk that much, especially to strangers. She began clearing the breakfast dishes. "He runs horses for the Bar C Ranch, about 5 miles north of town. Good man. Quiet. Keeps to himself mostly." "He seemed—" Ella searched for the right word. "Courteous. That he is. Lost his wife 5 years back to fever. Haven't seen him look twice at a woman since." Mrs. Henley gave Ella a meaningful glance. "Until today." Ella felt heat rise in her cheeks. "I'm not looking for that kind of attention, Mrs. Henley. From anyone. Didn't say you were child. Just observing." The older woman's expression softened. "Though I'll tell you something about Colt McCade. He's not the type to push where he's not wanted. If you tell him to keep his distance, he will." Within an hour, Samuel Griffith had shown Ella the room above his shop. It was perfect, a large space with windows facing east and south, a separate entrance via outside stairs, and rent she could almost afford. $5 a month, the elderly leather worker said. "Plus, I'd appreciate if you could help with mending some of my work. My eyes aren't what they were." $3 and I'll do your mending," Ella countered. Samuel grinned, revealing several missing teeth. $4 and you've got a deal." They shook hands, and Ella felt the first stirring of hope since stepping off the train. By afternoon, she'd swept the space clean, arranged her few supplies, and hung a simple sign in the window, "E. Whitlow, Fine Sewing and Mending." Her first customer arrived before she'd finished unpacking. Miss Whitlow, a young cowboy, stood in her doorway, hat in hand, looking sheepish. "Colt McCade sent me. Said you might could fix this." He held up a shirt torn nearly in half. "Goodness, what happened?" "Got caught on barbed wire chasing strays. Colt said if anyone could save it, you could." She examined the damage. The shirt was good quality cotton, worth saving. "I can fix it, though it won't be invisible. 2 bits. "Yes, ma'am. When do you need it?" "Day after tomorrow." He looked relieved. "Thank you, ma'am. Name's Tom Brennan. I work out at the Bar C." After he left, 3 more cowboys appeared with various repairs. Then Mrs. Henley arrived with 2 local women, both interested in new dresses for the spring church social. By evening, Ella had a week's worth of work lined up. She was measuring hem lengths when she heard boots on the outside stairs. The door opened to reveal Colt McCade, snow dusting his shoulders again. He removed his hat immediately. "Miss Whitlow, I hope I'm not interrupting." "Not at all. How can I help you?" He reached inside his coat and withdrew a carefully folded shirt. "I wondered if this could be mended. It's not urgent." She took the shirt, noting the quality of the fabric, the careful way he'd folded it. There was a tear at the shoulder and what looked like a blood stain near it. "Bar fight?" she asked, then immediately regretted the personal question. "Horse accident. Sometimes they have opinions about being ridden." His mouth quirked in what might have been a smile. "Can it be saved?" "Yes, though the stain might not come out completely." "That's all right. It's still a good shirt." He paused, looking around the room. "You've settled in quick." "I prefer to stay busy." "Sensible." He pulled out a leather pouch. "What do I owe you?" "I haven't done the work yet." "You will." He placed 50 cents on her work table. "That should cover it." It was twice what she would have charged. "That's too much." "Consider it an investment in keeping the Bar C boys looking respectable." This time, he did smile. Just slightly. "They're already singing your praises at the bunkhouse." He turned to go, then paused at the door. "That offer about the horse stands. Anytime you need it." After he left, Ella unfolded the shirt more carefully. Pinned inside was a small note, "Still good, like you." She read it twice before understanding. He'd heard, somehow, he knew about James, about her situation, and this was his way of saying, what? That she wasn't damaged goods, that abandonment hadn't lessened her worth. She tucked the note into her pocket and set about mixing a solution for the blood stain. Outside, snow began falling again, soft and steady. Through her window, she could see Colt McCade mounting his horse at the end of the street. He sat tall in the saddle, comfortable with the animal's movements, then disappeared into the white veil of winter. Over the following days, Ella established a routine. Morning coffee with Mrs. Henley, full days of sewing, quiet evenings by the boarding house fire. The cowboys from the Bar C became regular customers, always polite, always paying promptly. She suspected Colt's influence in their good behavior. He himself didn't return immediately, but his presence lingered in small ways. Tom Brennan mentioning that Colt had suggested she might embroider their ranch brand on shirts for an extra fee, which she did. Gladly. Another hand arriving with leather scraps from Samuel's shop that Colt thought you might use for patches. The way other men in town seemed to give her a wider berth, respectful rather than familiar. A week into her residence. Ella was working late when she heard a commotion in the street. Through her window, she saw a man weaving drunkenly through the snow, shouting obscenities. Her blood chilled when he began climbing her outside stairs. Before she could bar the door, it swung open. The stranger filled the doorway, reeking of whiskey. Well, the new seamstress. Heard you was pretty. He stumbled forward. Ella grabbed her scissors. Leave, now. Don't be unfriendly. Just want to get acquainted. Heavy footsteps sounded on the stairs behind him. A hand fell on the drunk's shoulder, spinning him around. Colt McCade stood there, his expression carved from stone. Evans, you're lost. Just being neighborly, McCade. Be neighborly somewhere else. Colt's voice held quiet menace. Now. Evans looked between them, seemed to calculate odds, then stumbled back down the stairs, muttering curses. Colt watched until he was gone, then turned to Ella. You all right? She realized she was still gripping the scissors. Yes, thank you. You need a lock on that door. I'll send Tom around tomorrow to install one. He hesitated. Unless you'd rather handle it yourself. The careful way he phrased it, giving her the choice, not assuming she needed or wanted his help, made her throat tight. I would appreciate Tom's help. Thank you. He nodded, started to leave, then looked back. Miss Whitlow, I know you can take care of yourself. Saw that the minute you stepped into Mrs. Henley's dining room. But this is a rough town sometimes. If you need anything, protection, help, just someone to walk you home after dark, you let me know. No strings, no expectations. Just one person looking out for another. Why? The question escaped before she could stop it. You don't know me. He considered this. Snow catching in his dark hair. Maybe not, but I know what it's like to start over. To have people whisper about why you're alone. To want to do it on your own terms. He touched his hat brim. Good night, Miss Whitlow. She stood in her doorway long after he'd gone, watching snow erase his footprints. For the first time since James's betrayal, she felt something besides anger and determination. Not attraction, she wouldn't allow that, but recognition, perhaps, of another soul who understood that sometimes the only way to heal was to stand apart, to choose solitude over settling. That night, she retrieved Colt's note from her pocket. Still good, like you. Tomorrow she would return his shirt, mended and clean. But tonight, she held those 3 words close. A different kind of promise than any she'd known before. Not a promise of possession or passion, just acknowledgement, just patient respect. Just waiting, without asking for anything in return. The blizzard struck 3 days later with a fury that surprised even the old-timers. By noon, Main Street had vanished beneath a white shroud, and the wind howled like something alive and angry. Ella watched from her workshop window as the last few souls scurried for shelter, then turned back to her sewing. She had enough work to keep busy, enough coal for her small stove, and had learned from Mrs. Henley to keep emergency provisions. The storm could rage, she would endure it. By evening, however, the temperature plummeted beyond anything she'd experienced. Ice formed inside the windows, and her breath came in visible puffs despite the stove burning hot. She wrapped herself in every shawl she owned, but the cold crept through the walls like a living thing. Near midnight, she admitted defeat. The workshop was simply too exposed, too poorly insulated. She'd have to return to the boarding house or risk freezing, bundling her current project, A wedding dress for the banker's daughter, in protective cloth. She prepared to brave the storm. The outside door wouldn't budge. Snow had drifted against it, sealing her in. The window was her only option. As she struggled with the frozen latch, a sound made her pause. Footsteps on the stairs, muffled but deliberate. "Miss Whitlow," Colt's voice carried through the wind. "You in there?" "Yes, the door's frozen shut." She heard him working at it, the scrape of a shovel, muttered words lost to the storm. Finally, the door cracked open, revealing Colt covered head to toe in snow, looking more like a bear than a man. "We need to get you somewhere warmer," he said without preamble. "This building won't hold heat in weather like this." "I was trying to get back to Mrs. Henley's." "Too dangerous now. Can't see 3 feet out there." He glanced around her workshop, taking in the meager stove, the frost-covered walls. "My place is closer, just across the back alley." "You'll freeze here." Ella hesitated, going to a man's rooms, even in an emergency. "There's a separate cabin for the ranch hands in town," he added, reading her concern. "Tom Brennan and Jake Morrison are there. You won't be. It's proper enough, and better than dying of cold for the sake of reputation." A particularly vicious gust shook the building, deciding her. "Let me gather a few things." He waited patiently while she packed necessities, then wrapped his own heavy blanket around her shoulders. "Stay close. Hold on to my coat." The journey across the alley took forever and no time at all. The wind tried to tear her away, but Colt's solid presence anchored her. Snow stung her face like needles, then blessed warmth as he pushed open a door and guided her inside. The cabin was simple but well built, with thick walls that shut out the worst of the storm's fury. A large fireplace dominated one wall, crackling with heat. 2 cowboys looked up from a card game at the table. "Miss Whitlow." Tom Brennan jumped to his feet. "What are you doing out in this?" "Her workshop's too cold," Colt explained, helping her to a chair near the fire. "She'll stay here until it passes." Jake Morrison, older and grizzled, nodded approval. "Smart thinking. That building's an ice box in weather like this. I'll heat some coffee." Ella found herself the center of respectful attention as the men bustled about, finding her blankets, pouring coffee, offering their best chair. Their careful politeness touched her. 3 rough cowboys treating her like visiting royalty. "Thank you," she managed through chattering teeth. "All of you." "No thanks needed," Colt said. He'd shed his snow-covered coat, revealing a thick wool shirt beneath. "Storm like this, we look after each other." The warmth gradually seeped into her bones. The men returned to their card game, including her in their conversation without expectation. She learned that Tom was saving to buy his own spread, that Jake had 3 daughters back in Texas, that they'd lost 12 head of cattle to the storm already. Colt went looking for strays. Tom mentioned. "That's how he saw your lamp still burning. Said only a fool or someone in trouble would be working this late in a blizzard." "Which was I?" Ella asked, surprising herself with a gentle tease. "Maybe a bit of both," Colt replied, his mouth quirking. "Though I'd lean toward dedicated rather than foolish." As the night wore on, the men took turns checking the fire and the storm's progress. Near 2 in the morning, Jake and Tom retired to their bunks in the back room, leaving Ella and Colt by the fire. "You should sleep," he said. "Take my bunk. I'll stay out here." "I couldn't take your bed." "Then we'll both stay by the fire." He settled into the other chair, long legs stretched toward the hearth. "Unless that makes you uncomfortable." She studied his profile in the firelight. There was a quiet strength to him, a steadiness that had nothing to do with physical power. He'd rescued her tonight but hadn't presumed anything because of it. "May I ask you something?" He turned to her, waiting. "Why did you really come looking tonight, the truth?" He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "Because I've been watching you, not in a way that should worry you." But watching you build something from nothing, watching you hold your head up when folks whisper, watching you turn loneliness into purpose. He paused. My wife, Mary, was like that. Strong in ways that had nothing to do with muscle. Tell me about her. She was a schoolteacher. Came out from Ohio convinced she could civilize us heathens. A soft smile crossed his face. Maybe she did, a little. We had 2 years together before the fever took her. 2 good years. I'm sorry. It was 5 years ago. The grief's still there, but gentler now. Like a scar instead of a wound. He looked at her directly. I'm not looking to replace her. Miss Whitlow. Want you to know that what I offered, friendship, help when needed, that's all I'm offering. Why? She asked again. Because I recognize someone protecting themselves. Someone who's been hurt and decided alone is safer than at risk. He leaned back, eyes on the fire. Because watching you these weeks, I see someone worth knowing. Not pursuing, just knowing. Ella pulled the blanket tighter around herself, though she was no longer cold. I was engaged, in St. Louis. We courted for 2 years. I thought... She swallowed. I saved myself for our wedding night. It seemed important then. A gift, I suppose. It wasn't wrong to think that. He didn't wait for me. When his opportunity came, a job out west, he took it. Without me. Without word. She stared at the flames. I came here thinking, I don't know what I thought, that he'd been delayed, that there was an explanation. Instead, I found he'd been gone 6 weeks. You still hold to it, the promise. She looked at him sharply, but found no judgment in his eyes. Just curiosity. Not for him, not anymore, but for me. Yes, because if I give that away now, to someone out of loneliness or need or gratitude, then he takes that from me too. My choice, my decision when and if and with whom. She lifted her chin. Maybe never. Maybe I'll be the spinster seamstress of Sable Hollow forever. But it will be my choice. Colt nodded slowly. That's fair. Your choice to make and keep. They sat quietly then, watching the fire burn low. Outside, the storm began to exhaust itself, the wind's howl diminishing to a moan. I should tell you, Colt said eventually, that when I saw you that first morning at Mrs. Henley's, something in me woke up that I thought had died with Mary. Not desire, exactly, recognition, maybe, of someone else who knew what it meant to start over. And now I think I'd like to be your friend, if you'll have me. Nothing more unless you decide otherwise. And if you never decide otherwise, that's acceptable too. He stood, adding another log to the fire. I'm good at waiting. Miss Whitlow. Been doing it for 5 years. I can do it for 50 more if that's what it takes. Or forever, if that's your choice. He moved toward the door. I'll check the storm. Try to rest. Morning will come soon enough. Alone by the fire, Ella found herself thinking about waiting. James hadn't waited even 6 months, but here was a man who spoke of waiting 50 years, or forever, without bitterness or expectation, just simple acceptance of her right to choose. When Colt returned, snow dusting his shoulders again, he found her still awake. Can't sleep. Thinking, she admitted, about how different men can be. Some take what they want, some ask for what they want, and some... She looked up at him. Some just wait. Which is best? I'm beginning to think the last kind. The ones who understand that some things can't be taken or asked for. They have to be given freely, or not at all. He moved to his chair, maintaining that careful distance he always kept. Rest now. You're safe here. And she was, she realized, safe in a cabin with 3 men because they'd decided she would be. Safe with this particular man because he'd made himself safe for her. Not harmless. She'd seen him handle Evans, but safe, by choice and conviction. She dozed then, wrapped in borrowed blankets that smelled faintly of leather and wood smoke. Once she woke to find a new blanket draped over her, Colt's own by the look of it. He sat watchful in his chair, keeping vigil through the storm. "Sleep," he murmured when he saw her stir. "Nothing will harm you here." She believed him, for the first time in months, maybe years. She felt truly protected, not possessed or claimed or owned, just watched over, with no debt incurred, no payment expected. When dawn came, pale and crystal clear after the storm, she woke to find coffee brewing and Tom cooking breakfast. Colt stood by the window, assessing the damage outside. "Looks like we can dig out," he announced. "I'll clear a path to Mrs. Henley's first." "Thank you," Ella said, "for everything." He turned to her, that quiet smile softening his weathered features. Neighbors help neighbors. That's all. But they both knew it was more than that. It was recognition, understanding. A blanket left outside a door, not to persuade or pursue, but simply to warm. It was waiting without asking. And maybe, Ella thought as she prepared to face the day, that was the beginning of something. Not romance, not yet, perhaps not ever, but connection, trust. The choice would be hers to make, in her own time or never. And he would wait. The morning air bit sharp and clean as Ella made her way to the stables at the edge of town. 3 weeks had passed since the blizzard, and she'd finally saved enough to consider Colt's offer about the horse. Her growing list of customers included 2 ranches outside town, and walking was no longer practical. She found him in the barn, running his hands along a mare's foreleg, speaking low and gentle to the animal. He looked up at her approach, that familiar, almost smile crossing his features. "Miss Whitlow, come about that horse." "If the offer stands." "Always stands." He straightened, wiping his hands on worn leather chaps. "Got several might suit. Want to meet them?" She nodded, following him deeper into the barn. The smell of hay and horses wrapped around her, earthy and somehow comforting. He stopped at a stall containing a bay mare with intelligent eyes. "This is Buttercup. Don't let the name fool you. She's steady as stone, good for someone learning their way around horses." He moved to the next stall. "Chester here is older but reliable. Knows every trail for 20 miles. They're both beautiful. Got one more you should meet." He led her to the far end, where a smaller paint horse stood watching them with curious eyes. "This is Sage. She's particular about who she likes, but gentle with those she chooses." Ella extended her hand slowly. The mare sniffed, then pushed her soft nose into Ella's palm, huffing warm breath. "Well," Colt said, something like surprise in his voice. "That's decided then. She doesn't usually take to strangers." "How much?" $1 a week includes feed, stall, and tack. You can pay as you're able." "That's too generous." "It's fair. Sage needs exercise. You need transportation. Works out even." He opened the stall door. "Want to try riding her just around the corral?" Ella hesitated. "I should mention, I've never actually ridden in St. Louis. We had carriages." "All the more reason to start slow." He led Sage out, movements efficient but gentle. "First rule, let her know you're there. Hand on her neck. Let her feel you." The next hour passed in patient instruction. How to mount, how to hold the reins, how to shift her weight with the horse's movement. Colt stayed close but never touched her, instead guiding with words and demonstration. "You're trying too hard," he observed as she struggled with posting. "Riding's like dancing. You don't fight the rhythm, you join it." "I was never much of a dancer either." "Sure about that." He took Sage's bridle, leading them in a slow circle. "Close your eyes. Feel how she moves. Stop thinking. Just feel." Ella obeyed, letting her body relax. Suddenly she understood the rise and fall, the natural rhythm of movement. "There," Colt said quietly. "You're riding." She opened her eyes to find him watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Pride. Maybe, or something deeper. "Want to ask you something," he said as he helped her dismount. "Not personal, business." "Oh." "The boys have been talking. About how you fixed Tom's shirt so the tear barely shows. How you made Jake's old coat look almost new." He rubbed his neck, seeming uncomfortable. "Thing is, we've got a problem at the ranch. Lost our cook last month, and the boys are surviving on beans and whatever doesn't run away fast enough. Was wondering—" "You want me to cook?" She couldn't hide her surprise. "No, well, not exactly." He leaned against the stall door. "We need someone to go through the bunkhouse. Mend what needs mending. Organize the chaos. Maybe teach the boys to sew on their own buttons. Day's work, maybe 2. I'd pay fair wages." "Why me?" "Because you're thorough. Because you don't judge a man for honest wear on his clothes. Because—" He paused. "Because I trust you to be around my men without causing problems." "Problems? You know what I mean. Some women enjoy the attention of a dozen cowboys. Creates competition, discord. You don't seem the type to encourage that." Ella considered. The money would help. Certainly. But more than that. She was curious about this world Colt inhabited when he wasn't in town. "When?" "Tomorrow, if you can manage. I'll send Tom with the wagon at dawn." "All right, but I have conditions." His eyebrow raised. "Such as—" "I work in the common areas only. No private bunks. The men treat me as they would their sister or mother. And you pay me the same as you'd pay a man for the work." "Done." He extended his hand, and she shook it, noting the calluses, the careful strength. "One more thing. You know why I'm really asking?" "Tell me." "Because I want you to see it. The ranch, where I spend most of my time. Want you to understand what kind of life it is out there." He released her hand. "Not trying to impress you or court you, just wanting you to know." The honesty of it struck her. No games, no hidden meanings. Just a man wanting a woman to understand his world, without pressure or expectation. The next morning came crisp and bright. Tom arrived with the wagon as promised, cheerful despite the early hour. The 5-mile journey passed in comfortable conversation, the landscape opening up from town buildings to wide prairie dotted with snow. The Bar C ranch sprawled across a valley, mountains rising behind it like sentinels. The main house sat on a small rise, solid and welcoming. Below, the bunkhouse and various outbuildings formed a rough square around a central yard. "It's larger than I expected," Ella admitted as they pulled up to the bunkhouse. "One of the biggest operations in the territory," Tom said with pride. "Mr. Garrison owns it, but Colt runs it. Been foreman for 3 years now." The bunkhouse interior was exactly as she'd imagined. Organized chaos. 12 bunks, a large table, a cooking area, and everywhere the detritus of men living without feminine influence. Clothes needing mending draped over every surface, socks with holes, shirts missing buttons, coats held together with hope and twine. "Lord have mercy," she breathed. "Yeah, it's pretty bad," Tom admitted sheepishly. "We keep meaning to fix things, but—" "But you don't know how." She rolled up her sleeves. "Right. First, I'll need hot water, lots of it, and every needle and thread on the premises." The day became a blur of activity. Cowboys drifted in and out, initially curious, then helpful as she organized them like a gentle general. This one to sort clothes by damage, that one to heat water, another to move the table where the light was better. She was deep in mending when spurs jingled on the porch. Colt entered, stopping short at the transformation already taking place. "Making progress." "Your men are eager students," she said, not looking up from her stitching. "Jake's already sewn on 3 buttons successfully." "Jake can barely tie his own boots." He was motivated. I told him I'd teach him to darn socks if he mastered buttons first. Colt moved closer, watching her hands work. You're good with them. They're just men who need practical skills. Nothing mysterious about it. She held up the shirt she was working on. This yours? How'd you know? It's the only one that's been properly maintained. You take care of your things. Habit. Grew up with nothing. Learned to make everything last. He settled into a chair across from her. Can I ask you something? She nodded, continuing her work. That promise you made, about your wedding night? Was it to God, to your family? The question surprised her. To myself, mostly, and to the man I thought I'd marry, why, just wondering who you'd need to release you from it, if you ever wanted to be released. She set down her sewing, meeting his eyes. That's the thing, Mr. McCade. It was my promise to make, so it's my promise to keep or break. No one else holds that power. Good, he said simply. That's how it should be. They worked in companionable silence then. Him sorting items for her attention, her fingers flying through repairs. Other cowboys came and went, each carefully respectful, each leaving with something mended. As afternoon shadows grew long, Colt stood. I need to check the north pasture. Will you be all right? Of course. He hesitated at the door. Ella, her first name, spoken soft as prayer. Thank you for this, for seeing them as men worth helping, not just rough cowboys. They're your men, she said simply. That speaks well of them. He left then, and she returned to her work. But something had shifted in that moment. The use of her name, the vulnerability in his thanks, the way he cared for those under his leadership. Near sunset, she was teaching young Sam Winters to thread a needle when commotion erupted outside. Horses thundering in, men shouting. She rushed to the door to see Colt dismounting, supporting another rider who slumped in his saddle. Get him inside, Colt ordered. Easy now. They carried in a cowboy she didn't recognize, blood seeping from a gash on his head. What happened? Someone asked. Spooked cattle. He went down hard. Colt looked around, spotted Ella. You know any doctoring? My mother was a midwife. She moved forward, professional calm taking over. I need clean water, whiskey if you have it, and the cleanest cloth available. The men scrambled to obey. She examined the wound, ugly but not deep, and set about cleaning it. The cowboy groaned but stayed conscious. You're lucky, she told him. Scalp wounds bleed fierce but heal clean. Hold still now. She worked with steady hands, aware of Colt watching, of the trust these men placed in her. When she finished, the cowboy was bandaged neat and proper. He needs rest, she instructed. Wake him every few hours. Make sure he knows his own name, any confusion or sickness. Ride for the doctor immediately. Yes, ma'am, several voices agreed. She cleaned her hands, suddenly exhausted. The day had been longer and more intense than expected. I should get back to town. She said, I'll drive you. Colt offered, Tom, see to things here. The ride back started in silence, the sunset painting the snow-covered prairie in shades of rose and gold. Finally, Colt spoke. You did good today, with the mending, but especially with Marcus. Anyone would have helped. No, he said firmly. Not everyone would have seen past the rough exterior to the men underneath. You treated them with dignity. That matters. They were approaching town when he spoke again. I meant what I said before, about waiting, but I want you to know, if you ever decide you want more than friendship, I'd be honored, and if you don't, I'm grateful for what we have now. Which is, he considered, truth, I suppose. Two people who've been hurt, choosing to trust again, in our own time, our own way. He pulled up outside the boarding house. As she climbed down, he called her name. Ella, that promise of yours, it's not a cage unless you make it one. It's just a choice, and choices can change. When you're ready, if you're ever ready. She stood on the boardwalk, lamplight spilling around her. What if I'm never ready? Then I'll be the best friend you'll allow me to be, and count myself lucky for it. He tipped his hat and drove away, leaving her standing in the gathering dusk. In her pocket, she fingered the payment for her day's work, exactly what a man would have earned, as promised. But it wasn't the money that warmed her as she climbed the boarding house steps. It was the memory of his voice saying her name, the patience in his eyes, the careful way he'd phrased his truth, not a demand or plea, just simple honesty. She'd kept her promise through betrayal and loneliness, kept it out of stubbornness and self-protection. But tonight, for the first time, she wondered if she was keeping it by choice or from fear, and which one would ultimately decide her fate. Spring came slowly to Sable Hollow, fighting winter for every inch of ground. By late March, patches of earth showed through the snow, and the air carried hints of growing things beneath the cold. Ella had settled into the rhythm of the town, her reputation as a skilled seamstress now firmly established. She was fitting Mrs. Garrison for a new Easter dress when the conversation turned, as it often did among the town's women, to the eligible men of the county. Of course, Colt McCade is the prize. Mrs. Garrison said, holding still as Ella pinned the hem. Steady income, good land prospects, and those eyes, but he's shown no interest in courting since poor Mary passed. Some say he's sweet on the new seamstress. Mrs. Palmer added from her seat by the window, her tone carrying just enough edge to make it clear what she thought of that possibility. Ella kept her focus on the fabric, her hands steady despite the heat rising in her cheeks. Well, if he is, he's certainly taking his time about it, Mrs. Garrison observed, though I suppose that's his way. Careful, deliberate. She glanced down at Ella. Has he called on you? Dear, we're friends, Ella said simply. Nothing more. Friends. Mrs. Palmer's voice dripped skepticism. Is that what they're calling it now? Before Ella could respond, the shop door burst open. Tom Brennan stood there, breathless and dusty. Miss Ella, you need to come quick. There's been an accident at the mill. Colt's hurt bad. The pins scattered from Ella's suddenly numb fingers. How bad? Beam came down, caught his shoulder inside. Doc's with him now. But Tom's young face was grave. He's asking for you. Ella grabbed her medical supplies, the kit she'd assembled after the incident with Marcus. Mrs. Garrison, we'll need to finish another time. Go, child, go. The ride to the ranch passed in a blur. Tom pushed the horses hard, filling the silence with details. A wall had given way at the old mill they were salvaging. Colt had shoved Jake clear but couldn't escape himself. They'd pulled him out unconscious, blood soaking his shirt. They found him in the main house, a place Ella had never entered. The doctor, a gruff man named Wallace, was washing his hands in a basin. You the seamstress? He asked without preamble. Yes, how is he? 3 broken ribs, dislocated shoulder, various cuts and bruises. I've set what I can, but... He lowered his voice. He needs watching, careful nursing. These cowboys mean well, but they don't know the first thing about proper care. I'll stay, Ella said immediately. Figured you might. The doctor dried his hands. He's been asking for you. Delirious, mostly. But your name keeps coming up. I'll be back tomorrow to check on him. Ella entered the bedroom quietly. Colt lay still against white sheets, his chest wrapped in bandages, his face pale beneath its usual tan. His eyes opened at her approach, struggling to focus. Ella, his voice came out rough, confused. You're here. Yes, she sat carefully on the bedside chair. Tom said you asked for me. Did I? He winced, trying to shift position. Don't remember. Head's fuzzy. The doctor gave you laudanum for the pain. You should rest. No. His good hand moved restlessly on the coverlet. Need to tell you, in case, you're going to be fine. Listen. His eyes found hers, suddenly lucid. If something happens, nothing will happen. I won't let it. A ghost of his usual almost smile crossed his face. Bossy. When necessary. She poured water from the pitcher, helped him drink. Now rest. I'll be here. Why? Because you're my friend. Because you asked for me. Because... She hesitated, then spoke truth. Because I want to be here. He closed his eyes, but his hand found hers, grip surprisingly strong. Stay! As long as you need me. The next days blurred together. Ella established a routine checking bandages, administering medicine, coaxing him to eat. The Cowboys took turns sitting with her, bringing meals, handling her work in town. Mrs. Henley sent supplies and encouragement. On the third night, fever struck. Colt tossed restlessly. Muttering broken phrases, Ella bathed his face with cool cloths, talking softly to anchor him to the present. Mary, he called out once, and Ella's heart clenched. No, she said gently. It's Ella. You're safe. You're home. His eyes opened, fever bright. Ella. Recognition dawned. You stayed. Of course I stayed. I'm not asking anything of you. Want you to know that just grateful you're here. I know. Stop talking and save your strength. But the fever had loosened his usual careful control. You're so beautiful, thought that first day. Like sunrise after 5 years of darkness. But I promised I wouldn't push. Wouldn't be like him. Like who? The one who didn't wait, who didn't see what he had. His hand tightened on hers. I see you, Ella Grace, see your strength, your kindness, your hurt. Want to heal it, but no, I can't. Only you can. Colt. Shh. Let me say it. May not get another chance. He struggled to focus. If I die, you're not dying. If I do, want you to know, waiting for you was worth it. Even if waiting's all I got. Being near you, being your friend. Worth everything. Tears burned Ella's eyes. Stop talking like that. You're going to be fine. Maybe. But if not... He pulled her hand to his chest, pressed it over his heart. Wanted you to feel this, just once. How it beats for you. How it has since that morning at Henley's. She felt the rapid pulse beneath her palm, the heat of fever, the life fighting to continue. Without thinking, she leaned down, pressed her lips to his forehead. Then keep it beating, she whispered. For me, for yourself, for all the mornings yet to come. He slept then, his hand still holding hers. She stayed awake, watching his breathing, monitoring the fever. Near dawn it broke, leaving him drenched but cooler. She changed his bandages, working by lamplight, noting with relief that the wounds showed no sign of infection. When Dr. Wallace arrived mid-morning, he pronounced the crisis past. You've done well, he told Ella. Better than I expected. He'll recover, thanks to your care. When can I move him? A woman's voice asked from the doorway. Ella turned to find an elegant woman in traveling clothes, blonde and polished despite the early hour. I'm sorry, the doctor said. My fiancé. When can he travel? I've come to take him back to Denver for proper care. The woman's gaze found Ella, dismissed her. You can go now. Girl, I'll handle things from here. Fiancé, Ella heard herself say. Charlotte Winters. The woman swept into the room proprietarily. Colt and I have an understanding, or will, once he's recovered enough to make it official. His letter last month was quite encouraging. Ella stood on numb legs. Letter understanding. She looked at Colt, still sleeping, then at this polished woman who moved with such confidence. I see, she managed. I'll gather my things. That's best. I'm sure you meant well. But Colt needs proper care now. I've brought my own nurse from Denver. Ella collected her supplies mechanically. Of course there would be someone else. Someone suitable. Someone who didn't come with scandal and broken engagements. She was at the door when Jake appeared, blocking Charlotte's path to the bed. "Don't think so, ma'am," he said politely but firmly. "I beg your pardon." "The boss gave orders. If he's sick or hurt, Miss Ella's in charge of his care. Nobody else."
"That's ridiculous. I'm his—"
"You're a stranger who says she knows him," Tom interrupted, joining Jake. "Miss Ella's the one he asked for, the one who's been here 3 days and nights keeping him alive. You want to move him, you'll need to go through us." Charlotte's face flushed.
"This is absurd. Colt wrote to me."
"Did he?" Jake crossed his arms. "Funny, since he does all his correspondence through me, being as I'm the only one who can read his handwriting. Don't recall any letters to Denver." "The Cattlemen's Association dinner. 2 months ago, we spoke at length about the future." "You spoke," Tom corrected. "I was there." Colt mostly nodded and tried to escape to the punch bowl. When he wakes, he can sort it out." Jake agreed. "Until then, Miss Ella stays. Doctor's orders, ranch orders, our orders." Charlotte looked between them, then at Ella. "You're making a mistake, all of you. Colt needs someone of his own class, his own world, not some—" Her eyes swept Ella's simple dress, her work-worn hands. "Seamstress." "Like his wife was a school teacher?" Jake asked mildly. "Seems Colt prefers women who work for their living." "We'll see about that." Charlotte gathered her skirts. "I'll be at the hotel in town. When he wakes, tell him I'm here. Tell him Charlotte has come to take him home." After she left, Ella sank into the bedside chair. "His own class." "Hogwash," Jake snorted. "Colt grew up with nothing, made his own way. That woman's been chasing him for 2 years, ever since her daddy lost his fortune and she needed a new one." "Still, if they have an understanding—" "They don't," Tom said firmly. "Trust me, Miss Ella, if Colt was courting someone, we'd know. He can barely order supplies without our help." "Despite everything," Ella smiled, "you all protect him." "He protects us," Jake corrected. "Fair's fair." She resumed her vigil, but Charlotte's words echoed. Someone of his own class, his own world. What did Ella really know of Colt's life beyond the ranch? Perhaps there were understandings she didn't comprehend, expectations that came with success. He woke near sunset, clearer-eyed than he'd been in days. "You're still here," he said, wonder in his voice. "Where else would I be?" "Don't know. Dreamed you left. Dreamed lots of things." He tried to sit up, grimaced. "How long?" 3 days. You had us worried." "Us?" "Me," she admitted. "You had me worried." His hand found hers. "Sorry, didn't mean to scare you." "Colt." She took a breath. "Charlotte Winters is here, from Denver. She says you have an understanding." His brow furrowed. "Charlotte, what's she doing here?" "She came to take you to Denver, for proper care." Ella kept her voice neutral. "She says you wrote to her." "I wrote to her father, about buying cattle, must have—" He closed his eyes. "She's been trying to arrange a match for 2 years. Her father encourages it. I've been polite but clear. She seems to think otherwise." "Ella." His eyes opened, locked on hers. "There's no understanding, no arrangement, no one but—" He stopped himself. "No one. You believe me." She studied his face, saw only truth there. "I believe you." "Good. Send Jake to town tomorrow. Tell Miss Winters thank you for her concern. But I'm well cared for. Tell her—" He paused. "Tell her I wish her luck in finding what she's looking for, but it isn't here." "That seems harsh." "It's honest. Kinder than letting her hope for something that won't happen." His thumb stroked her knuckles. I learned that from someone. Better to be clear about what you can and can't offer. They sat quietly as shadows lengthened. Finally, Ella spoke. You talked in your fever, said things. Did I? Wariness crossed his features. I hope I didn't. I tried so hard not to burden you with feelings you didn't welcome. They weren't unwelcome, she said softly. Just unexpected. Ella? No, let me finish. She gathered courage. I made a promise once. You know that, and I've held to it out of pride and hurt and stubbornness. But sitting here, watching you fight, I realized something. She lifted their joined hands, studied the contrast. His weathered and strong, hers pale but steady. I've been so focused on not giving myself to the wrong person that I stopped considering I might want to give myself to the right one. Someday, when I'm ready, if they're willing to wait, I'll wait, he said immediately. As long as you need, forever if necessary. I know, she smiled, real and warm. That's what makes you the right one, or might, if I decide, when I decide. No pressure, no expectations, just hope. Hope, she agreed, on both sides. She leaned down, kissed his forehead again, lingering this time. When she pulled back, his eyes were bright with something that wasn't fever. Rest now, she said. Heal. We have time. All the time you need, he promised. Outside, spring continued its slow conquest of winter. Inside, two hearts began their own careful thaw, moving towards something that might be love, might be forever, might be everything, but would only be when she was ready, and he would wait. April arrived with wildflowers and gossip. As Colt recovered and returned to his duties, the town's whispers grew louder. Ella felt the weight of speculation everywhere, at the mercantile, the church, even in her own shop. The proper ladies of Sable Hollow had much to say about a seamstress who'd spent 3 nights nursing a bachelor cowboy. Of course, we all understand it was an emergency, Mrs. Palmer said during a fitting, her tone suggesting she understood no such thing. Still, people will talk. Let them, Ella replied, keeping her voice steady as she adjusted the woman's hem. My dear, you must think of your reputation. A woman alone must be above reproach. I saved a man's life. I'd do it again. Mrs. Palmer sniffed. Well, I certainly hope Mr. McCade appreciates the sacrifice you've made for him. The sacrifice. As if caring for someone in need was something to be ashamed of. Ella bit back sharper words, focusing on her stitching, but the conversation lingered like smoke. That evening, she was closing her shop when 3 cowboys appeared on the stairs. Not from the Bar C, she knew all of Colt's men now. These were rougher, trail-worn, with calculating eyes. Evening, miss, the tallest said, removing his hat with exaggerated courtesy. Heard you're the seamstress who takes real good care of cowboys. I mend clothes, Ella said carefully. The shop is closed now. Maybe we're not here for mending. Another man grinned, showing tobacco-stained teeth. Maybe we heard how you spent 3 nights at the Bar C nursing McCade. Real dedicated. That was medical care. He was injured. Sure it was. The third man, younger but no less threatening, moved closer. We're injured too. Hearts just breaking for some tender care. Ella's hand found her scissors in her pocket. You need to leave, now. Don't be unfriendly. We're paying customers, or we could be, if you're as accommodating as folks say. The tall one reached for her arm. Ella pulled the scissors free, but before she could use them, a hand fell on the man's shoulder, spinning him around. Colt stood there, still pale from his recovery, but his eyes were hard as winter ice. Evening, boys, he said quietly. Lost. McCade, didn't know you were in town. I'm always where I need to be. His gaze never wavered. You boys were just leaving. We were talking to the lady. No, you were insulting her. Different thing entirely. Colt's hand rested casual on his gun belt. Now you're leaving. While you still can. The men measured him, 1 against 3, still recovering from injury. But something in his stance, his absolute calm, made them reconsider. No trouble intended. The tall one muttered, just being friendly. Be friendly somewhere else, and spread the word. Miss Whitlow is under the protection of the Bar C. Any man who forgets that will answer to me, personal. They left, boots loud on the stairs. Colt waited until they were gone before turning to Ella. The hardness in his face softened to concern. You all right?
Yes, thank you.
She realized she was shaking.
How did you know?
Jake saw them heading this way. Had a bad feeling. He swayed slightly, caught himself on the doorframe. Sorry, still not quite steady. You shouldn't be riding yet. Come inside, sit down. She guided him to a chair, poured water from her pitcher. He drank gratefully, color slowly returning to his face. This is my fault, he said finally. What? The gossip. Those men thinking. He set down the glass hard. I should have been more careful. Should have had Mrs. Henley stay at the ranch while you nursed me. Should have thought how it would look. I don't care how it looked. You should. Your reputation is mine to risk. She sat across from him. I made a choice to help you. I'd make it again. Even knowing the cost. What cost? Whispers from bored women, assumptions from crude men. She lifted her chin. I've been gossiped about since I arrived. The abandoned fiancé, the woman too proud to accept help. Now I'm the seamstress who spent 3 nights alone with a man. So what? So those men won't be the last to make assumptions. Then they'll learn they're wrong, like those 3 did. Colt studied her. Something shifting in his expression. You're not afraid? I've been afraid my whole life. Afraid of not being good enough, proper enough, perfect enough. Afraid of making the wrong choice, trusting the wrong person. She met his gaze directly. I'm tired of fear. What changed? You almost died. The words came out raw, honest. I sat beside your bed thinking about all the things fear had stolen from me. Chances not taken, words not spoken, and I decided I was done letting fear choose for me. Ella, I'm not saying I'm ready for everything, but I'm ready to stop hiding behind old promises and other people's expectations. He leaned forward, careful of his ribs. What are you saying? I'm saying that if you want to court me properly, openly, I'm willing. The smile that crossed his face was like sunrise. You mean it? Yes, but I need you to understand. Your promise still stands. I know. I'm not asking for anything but the chance to spend time with you. Public time. Let people see what they want to see. They'll assume that we have. Let them assume. We'll know the truth. He reached for her hand. I've waited this long. I can wait as long as you need. But at least now I can wait while holding your hand in daylight. She squeezed his fingers. The talk will get worse. Then we'll face it together. Unless... Are you sure I don't want you to feel obligated because I was hurt? Or because you're grateful? Colt McCade. She used his full name, making him look up. I am grateful you're alive, but that's not why I'm saying yes. I'm saying yes because you make me feel safe. Because you see me as more than a tragedy or a conquest. Because you're willing to wait without making me feel guilty for needing time. Those are good reasons. The best reasons. She stood, pulling him up with her. Now, you need to get home before you fall over. When you're fully healed, you can call on me properly. Bring flowers. Take me for rides. All the things courting couples do. Everything but that. When I'm ready, if I'm ready, you'll be the first to know. He lifted her hand, kissed it gently. I'll be the only one to know. Yes, she agreed softly.
The only one.
After he left, Ella stood in her shop feeling strangely light. Tomorrow the gossip would intensify. Mrs. Palmer would be scandalized. The proper ladies would whisper behind their fans. But for the first time since arriving in Sable Hollow, Ella didn't care. 2 days later, a package arrived at her shop. Inside was an old shirt, carefully folded, with a note pinned to it. This shirt has seen me through 5 years of loneliness. It doesn't fit anymore. Something about my heart growing 3 sizes. Thought you could make something new from it, like you're making something new from me. See. She held the soft flannel, recognizing it as the shirt he'd worn that first morning at Mrs. Henley's, the shirt that had brought him to her shop, the beginning of everything. That evening, she began cutting it apart, envisioning what it might become. A quilt, perhaps, something warm and lasting, made from pieces of the past but shaped for the future. Like them. The next Sunday, Colt arrived at the boarding house in his best clothes, hat in hand. Mrs. Henley answered his knock with a knowing smile. Miss Whitlow, you have a caller. Ella descended the stairs, aware of every eye in the boarding house upon them. She'd dressed carefully, her best blue dress, hair pinned but softer than usual. Colt's intake of breath when he saw her was worth every whisper that would follow. Miss Whitlow, he said formally, would you do me the honor of accompanying me to church? I would be delighted. Mr. McCade. She took his offered arm, and they walked into the morning sunshine. People stared. Some nodded approval. Others frowned. Ella kept her head high, her hand steady on his arm. Regrets? He asked quietly as they passed a group of particularly disapproving matrons. None, she replied, and meant it. They sat together in church, the first public declaration of their courtship. Reverend Davis spoke about patience and faith, about waiting for God's timing. Ella felt Colt's presence beside her like warmth, solid and sure. After the service, Charlotte Winters approached them on the church steps. She'd stayed in town. Ella had heard, still hoping to change Colt's mind. Mr. McCade, she said coolly, I see you've recovered, no doubt due to Miss Whitlow's dedicated care. Indeed, Colt replied pleasantly. I owe her my life. How fortunate that gratitude has blossomed into whatever this is. Her eyes swept dismissively over their linked arms. What this is, Colt said clearly, loud enough for nearby listeners to hear, is me courting the finest woman in Colorado, openly and honorably, with intentions to win her hand when she's ready to give it. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Ella felt her cheeks burn but kept her chin high. Charlotte's perfect composure cracked. You're making a mistake. She's not. She's everything. Colt interrupted. And you're leaving. Today. Because if I hear you've said one word against her, to anyone, I'll make sure every rancher in the territory knows exactly why your father needs investment money so badly. The gambling debts, the failed mines, all of it. Charlotte went white. You wouldn't. Try me. She left that afternoon, her fancy carriage kicking up dust as it headed back to Denver. The town buzzed with the drama, but Ella found she enjoyed it now, not being the subject of pity, but of envy. Colt McCade, the most eligible bachelor in the county, had chosen her, publicly, proudly. Thank you, she said as he drove her home in his wagon. For defending me. Always will. Get used to it. I mean it. You didn't have to threaten her. Yes, I did. He glanced at her. She hurt you. Nobody hurts you. Not while I'm breathing. The fierceness in his voice made her throat tight. This man, who waited so patiently, who accepted her boundaries without question, he would also fight for her, protect her, value her. I'm still not ready, she said quietly. For everything, I need you to know that. I know. He covered her hand with his. But you're ready for this. For us, For now, that's more than enough. And someday will take care of itself. We've got today, got tomorrow, got all the time you need to decide what someday looks like. She leaned against his shoulder, feeling the solid strength of him. Around them, the prairie stretched endless and green, full of promise. I'm glad you're courting me, Colt McCade. I'm glad you're letting me, Ella Whitlow. They rode in comfortable silence, her head on his shoulder, his hand holding hers. Behind them, the town probably buzzed with fresh gossip. Ahead, the future waited, patient as the man beside her. For the first time in her life, Ella wasn't afraid of either. The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning in early May, delivered by a dusty rider who'd come all the way from Denver. Ella was working on a christening gown when Tom Brennan burst into her shop. Miss Ella, there's a man at Henley's asking for you. Says he's got important business, personal business. Her hand stilled on the delicate fabric.
Did he give a name?
Duke Marlowe, ma'am. Says he knew you in St. Louis. The needle slipped, pricking her finger. A spot of blood welled up, bright against her pale skin. Duke, not James. She'd almost forgotten that James Whitlow had been his middle name, that he'd gone by Duke to his friends.
Tell him I'll see him here, in my shop.
She kept her voice steady.
In an hour.
Tom hesitated. Want me to fetch Colt?
No.
She pressed a cloth to her finger.
This is something I need to handle alone.
But word traveled fast in Sable Hollow. By the time Duke arrived, half the town seemed to have found reasons to linger near her shop. She saw Jake across the street, pretending to examine harnesses. Mrs. Henley swept her porch with unusual vigor. Even Reverend Davis had decided the church steps needed immediate attention. Duke looked exactly as she remembered. Tall, golden-haired, with the easy confidence that came from never having been denied anything. His clothes were fine, his boots polished, his smile practiced as he climbed her stairs.
Ella, my God, you look different.
It's been nearly 6 months. Duke? She didn't invite him in, standing instead in her doorway.
Why are you here?
May I come in, please? I've traveled so far to find you. Against her better judgment, she stepped aside. He entered, his eyes taking in her modest shop, her simple dress, her work-worn hands. You've been sewing.
It's honest work. Of course. I didn't mean...
He removed his hat, running fingers through his hair in a gesture she once found charming. Ella, I've made a terrible mistake. Have you... Leaving without you? Without word? It was cowardly. Wrong. I see that now. He stepped closer. I've come to make it right.
There's nothing to make right. You chose your path. I've chosen mine.
But that's just it. You haven't chosen. You're here, alone, working as a seamstress when you should be my wife, when you should be living in comfort in California, where I've made quite a success. I'm not alone. His face darkened.
Yes, I heard some cowboy. Really, Ella.
After everything we meant to each other. What did we mean to each other? Duke, tell me. We were engaged. Were we? I recall promises, plans, 2 years of courtship where you assured me daily that you loved me, that you'd wait for me. She met his eyes directly. Then you left, without a word, without even the courtesy of ending it properly.
I was young, foolish. The opportunity came so suddenly.
6 weeks. You were gone 6 weeks before I arrived. That's not sudden. That's choice. He moved closer still, reaching for her hands. She stepped back.
Ella, please, I know I hurt you, but I'm here now. I've come back for you. We can be married immediately. Tonight, if you wish. I know you've kept yourself,
that you've maintained your virtue, waiting for marriage, waiting for me. Not for you. The words came out sharp, clear.
Never for you, not anymore.
For him, then, this cowboy, Do you truly think he'll wait as I have, as I'm willing to now? He's been waiting, without asking, without pushing, without making me feel like my choice is a burden or a prize to be won. Duke's handsome face twisted. How long do you think that will last? How long before he grows tired of waiting and finds someone more accommodating? Like you did. The shot hit home. He flushed. That was different. I'm a man. I have needs. And I'm a woman with choices. I choose not to forgive you. I choose not to marry you. I choose to stay here, where I've built a life. Built a life as a seamstress in this nowhere town. His voice rose. I'm offering you everything. Ella, position, comfort, the life we planned. The life you planned, without consulting me. The shop door opened. Colt stood there, hat in hand, careful not to intrude but making his presence known. Everything all right, Ella? Duke turned, taking in Colt's worn clothes, his work-hardened hands, the quiet strength in his stance. This is him. This is who you'd choose over me. Duke Marlowe, Colt McCade. Ella said simply. Colt, Duke was just leaving. I don't think we're finished here, Duke protested. We've been finished for 6 months. Ella replied. You just didn't know it. Duke looked between them, saw something in their faces that made his shoulders slump. He doesn't deserve you. What you're saving. What you've kept pure all this time. That's where you're wrong, Colt said quietly. I don't deserve her, but I'll spend every day trying to, and what she's chosen to save or share is her decision. Not mine, not yours, hers. You don't understand, Duke insisted. We had an agreement. She promised. She promised herself. Colt interrupted. Not you. You gave up any claim to her promises when you left her waiting at a train station in winter. When you chose California over her. And you think you're better some ranch hand playing at gentleman. No, I know exactly what I am. A man who recognizes worth when he sees it. Who understands that some things are worth waiting for. Forever, if necessary. Colt's gaze never wavered. The question is, are you going to leave with dignity? Or do I need to help you find the door? Duke's face went red, then white. He looked at Ella one last time. You're making a mistake. When he disappoints you, and he will remember I offered you everything. You offered me a life where my choices meant nothing. Where my promises were about your pride, not my heart. Ella moved to stand beside Colt. He offers me respect, time, the freedom to choose when and if I'm ready. That's worth more than all your California gold. Duke left then, his boots heavy on the stairs, through the window. Ella watched him mount his horse and ride away. Dust swirling in his wake, the past, finally, truly behind her. You all right? Colt asked softly. Yes. She was surprised to find it true. Yes, I am. Want to talk about it? Not really, maybe later. Right now. She looked up at him. Right now, I just want to stand here and be grateful. For what? For you. For your patience. For the way you see me as a person. Not a prize. She touched his face gently. For waiting without making me feel guilty about needing time. Ella. He was right about one thing. You don't deserve to wait forever. No one does. That's not your worry. That's mine. What if I'm never ready? What if the damage is too deep, the fear too strong? He caught her hand, held it against his cheek. Then we'll have had these moments, this connection, this love, because that's what it is, at least for me. Love that doesn't demand anything except the chance to exist. You love me. Have for months. Maybe since that first morning at Henley's. But loving you doesn't give me rights to you. Doesn't mean you owe me anything. Just means I'm lucky enough to feel it. Tears slipped down her cheeks. I don't know if I love you. I think I do, but I've been wrong before. Been fooled by my own heart. Then take your time figuring it out. I'm not going anywhere. Promise. Promise. They stood there in her shop, his hand holding hers. The ghost of Duke Marlowe finally exorcised. Outside, the town gradually returned to its business. The drama over for now. I should get back to work, Ella said eventually. And I should check on the boys. They're probably taking bets on whether I threw him out or not. Did you want to? Desperately, but it wasn't my fight. It was yours. You handled it perfectly.
I kept your promise,
she said suddenly. My promise?
The one you helped me see. That it was my promise to keep or break or transform into something new. Not his. Not tied to him or anyone else. Mine. And I'm still keeping it. But differently now. Not out of hurt or pride or stubbornness. Out of choice. Because when I'm ready, if I'm ready, I want it to mean something. Want it to be about love and trust and forever. Not obligation or expectation or someone else's timeline. That sounds like a good reason.
The best reason. He kissed her forehead gently. The first kiss he'd initiated. I'll see you Sunday for church. And dinner after, if you'd like, Mrs. Henley's making pot roast. I'd like that very much. After he left, Ella returned to the christening gown, her hands steady now. The tiny stitches came together like promises, careful, deliberate, meant to last. She thought about Duke, probably halfway back to Denver by now, nursing his wounded pride. She felt nothing for him, no anger, no regret, no lingering affection. He was simply part of her past, a lesson learned. But Colt was possibility, patient, steady, unwavering possibility. That evening, Mrs. Henley brought her tea and gossip. Old town's talking about Duke Marlowe's visit, how you sent him packing. I simply told him the truth.
Good for you.
Man like that, thinking he can waltz back in after what he did. She settled into a chair. Colt looked ready to tear him apart. But he didn't. He let me handle it. That's a good man, letting you fight your own battles while standing ready to help if needed.
Yes,
Ella agreed.
He is.
You love him. Ella considered. I think so, but I thought I loved Duke once too. Different kind of thinking, though isn't it Duke was all butterflies and dreams. Colt's more like good earth, solid, real, the kind of thing you can build on. When did you get so wise? When Mr. Henley died. God rest him. I learned the difference between flash and substance. He wasn't the handsomest or richest man who courted me, but he was the one who stayed. Through illness and loss and ordinary Tuesdays. That's love. Child. The staying kind. That night, Ella worked on the quilt she was making from Colt's old shirt. Each piece carefully cut, arranged, waiting to become something new. Like her heart, perhaps, taking fragments of the past and stitching them into a future. She thought about Duke's words. How long before he grows tired of waiting? But Duke had never understood. It wasn't about waiting. Not really. It was about choosing. About two people deciding, day after day, that what they had was worth nurturing. That love could exist without possession. That promise could transform from cage to wings. Tomorrow she would see Colt again. Sunday they would sit together in church while the town whispered, someday, maybe, she would be ready for more. Or maybe not. And either way, he would stay. That was the miracle. Not the waiting, but the staying, the daily choice to be present, patient, true. She held up the quilt pieces to the lamplight, envisioning the pattern they'd make. Something beautiful from something old, something warm from fragments, something lasting from patience and promise and the revolutionary idea that love could exist without demand. Outside, stars appeared in the vast Colorado sky. Somewhere, Duke rode toward a future that no longer included her. Here, in her small shop above the leather store. Ella stitched hope into fabric and felt her heart slowly, carefully, beginning to heal. Not for Colt, not for anyone but herself. But perhaps, when she was whole again, she would have something precious to offer, not her body as prize or payment, but her heart as gift. Freely given, finally ready, worth all the patience in the world. Perhaps. But tonight, the possibility was enough. The fire started just after midnight on a humid June evening. Ella woke to the acrid smell of smoke and the sound of shouting in the street. Through her window, she could see orange flames licking at the sky from the direction of the Bar C ranch. She dressed quickly and ran downstairs to find Tom Brennan in the street, his horse lathered with sweat. "It's the hay barn," he said breathlessly. "Lightning strike. We're trying to save it, but the wind's spreading it toward the bunkhouse. Is anyone hurt?" "Not yet, but Colt's in there trying to get the horses out. Won't leave until they're all safe." Ella's heart clenched. "I'm coming with you." "Miss Ella, it's dangerous." "I'm coming." Her tone brooked no argument. She saddled Sage quickly, grateful for all the riding lessons Colt had given her. They raced through the darkness, following the terrible glow on the horizon. The smell of smoke grew stronger with each mile. The scene at the ranch was chaos. The hay barn was fully engulfed, flames shooting 30 feet into the air. Men ran everywhere with buckets, forming chains from the well, fighting desperately to keep the fire from spreading. Through the smoke and confusion, she spotted Colt emerging from the horse barn, leading 2 terrified mares. His shirt was singed, his face streaked with soot. As she watched, he handed the horses off to Jake and turned back toward the burning building. "No." Ella dismounted and ran toward him. "Colt, stop!" He paused, seeing her. "Ella, what do you get back? It's not safe." "Neither is going back in there. They're still dusty and her foal. I can't leave them." "Then I'm coming with you." "Absolutely not." But she was already pulling her shawl over her nose and mouth. "We don't have time to argue. Together we can get them out faster." He looked like he wanted to protest further, but another section of the barn roof collapsed in a shower of sparks. Without another word, he grabbed her hand and they ran together into the smoke-filled horse barn. Inside was a nightmare of thick smoke and panicked animals. Ella's eyes streamed, her lungs burned, but she kept hold of Colt's hand as he led them to the far stall. There, a mare stood protectively over her young foal, both animals wild-eyed with terror. "Easy, girl," Colt crooned, approaching slowly. "We're getting you out." The mare reared, hooves flashing dangerously close. Ella instinctively moved forward, humming low in her throat, a lullaby her mother used to sing. Something in the melody seemed to reach the terrified animal. The mare's ears flicked toward her. "Keep singing," Colt murmured, easing a rope around the mare's neck. Ella continued the wordless tune, moving slowly toward the foal. The little one pressed against her legs. Trembling, she gathered it in her arms, surprised by how light it was. "Now move," Colt commanded. "Fast." They stumbled through the smoke, Colt leading the mare, Ella carrying the foal. Behind them, something crashed, burning timber falling. The mare tried to bolt, but Colt held firm. Then they were outside, gasping in the cleaner air, the foal bleating for its mother. "Get them to the far pasture," Colt ordered Tom, who appeared to take the animals. Then he turned to Ella, his face a mix of relief and anger. "What were you thinking? You could have been killed?" "So could you." "That's different." "No, it's not." She was surprised by her own vehemence. "You think your life matters less than mine? You think I could stand by and watch you die?" "Ella." "Fire's contained," Jake shouted, running up. "We saved the bunkhouse and the main barn. Hay barn's a total loss, but no one's hurt bad. Few burns, smoke breathing." "Thank God." Colt sagged with relief, then seemed to remember his anger. "Ella, we need to talk." "Yes," she agreed. "We do." They walked away from the chaos, toward the small grove of cottonwoods by the creek. The fire still glowed behind them, but the immediate danger had passed. Colt stopped by the water's edge, stripping off his ruined shirt and splashing water on his face and arms. That's when Ella saw the burn across his shoulder, angry red in the moonlight. "You're hurt."
"It's nothing."
"It's not nothing." She tore a strip from her petticoat, soaked it in the cool water. "Sit down. Let me see." He sat on a fallen log, unusually compliant. She cleaned the burn gently, feeling him tense under her touch. "This will scar," she said softly. "Another one for the collection. Don't joke. You scared me tonight."
"I scared you, Ella. When I saw you running toward that burning barn,"
his voice broke. "I can't lose you. Not now. Not ever. Then you understand how I felt watching you go back in there." He caught her hand, stilling its movement. "It's my job to protect the ranch, the animals, the men." "And who protects you?"
"I don't need—" "Yes, you do. Everyone needs someone watching out for them, someone who cares if they live or die."
She met his eyes.
"I care. Colt, more than I thought possible."
"Enough to risk your life."
"Apparently."
He pulled her down beside him on the log, keeping her hand in his.
"You could have died tonight. For horses. For me."
"You would have done the same."
"That's different."
"Why? Because you're a man. Because you think your life is worth less than mine." "Because I love you," he said simply. "Because losing you would end me." The words hung between them, powerful in their simplicity. Ella felt her heart constrict.
"And you think losing you wouldn't end me?"
His eyes widened. "Ella!"
"I love you too."
The words came out in a rush.
"I've been afraid to say it, afraid to trust it, but tonight made it clear. When I thought you might die in that fire, I knew I love you, Colt McCade. Not like I thought I loved Duke. That was just pretty dreams. This is real, bone deep, the kind that makes you run into burning buildings."
He cupped her face in his soot-stained hands.
"Say it again."
"I love you. Ella Grace Whitlow loves me." Wonder filled his voice.
"After all my waiting and hoping—"
"I'm still not ready," she said quickly.
For everything. I need you to know."
"I know. I've always known. And it doesn't matter."
"How can it not matter?"
"Because this, what we have right now, is already more than I dreamed." He pressed his forehead to hers.
"I love you. You love me. Everything else is details."
"Important details. Maybe, but not as important as this." He pulled back to look at her. "Ella, I would wait forever for your body. But your heart, your love, that's the real gift. That's what I've been hoping for." Tears slipped down her cheeks, mixing with the soot and ash.
"I don't deserve you."
"Other way around." He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, tasting of smoke and salvation. "Will you stay tonight? Not like that. Just stay."
"Mrs.
Martinez will be tending the burned men. You can help.
I need you close. Need to know you're safe."
"Yes." They walked back to find the ranch in a state of exhausted victory. The fire was out, the damage contained to just the hay barn. Men sat in small groups, sharing water, tending minor burns. Mrs. Martinez, the cook, had set up a makeshift medical station in the main house. Ella worked beside her through the dawn, cleaning wounds, applying salve, offering comfort. Colt moved among his men, checking injuries, calculating losses, already planning the rebuild. But his eyes found her often, warm with something more than gratitude. As the sun rose, painting the mountains gold, Ella found herself on the porch with a cup of Mrs. Martinez's strong coffee. The burned barn still smoldered, black and skeletal against the morning sky. It would cost dearly to replace. She knew. The ranch would struggle. Wool for thought. Colt joined her, his own coffee steaming, wondering how bad the loss is. "Bad enough, but we'll manage. Always do." He studied her profile. "That's not really what you're thinking about." No, she admitted. I'm thinking about promises, about how they can change shape without breaking. Oh, I promised myself something once. Promised to save my first night for marriage. For the right man. For love. She turned to face him. I still believe in keeping that promise, but I'm starting to see it differently. How so? Duke thought it was about possession, about being untouched, like some prize to be won. She set down her coffee. But that's not what it means to me anymore. It's about trust, about being sure, about knowing that when I give myself, all of myself, it's to someone who sees me as more than just a body to claim. Ella, let me finish. She took his hand. You've shown me what real love looks like. Patient, protective, willing to wait without demanding, loving my heart and mind, not just wanting my body. I do want you, he said honestly. I'm a man, not a saint, but wanting isn't the same as needing to have. Your love is enough, more than enough. What if... She took a breath. What if I'm almost ready? Not quite, but almost. What if seeing you run into that fire made me realize that life is short and promises should be about joy, not fear? His hand tightened on hers. I'd say take all the time you need to be sure. Almost isn't yes. And if almost becomes yes, then I'll be the happiest man in Colorado. But if almost stays almost, or becomes no, I'll still be happy. Because you love me. Because you're here. Because you ran into a burning barn for me. She laughed, surprising herself. We're quite a pair, aren't we? The best pair. He lifted her hand, kissed it gently. Whatever you decide, whenever you decide it, I'll be here, waiting, loving you, building a life with you in whatever way you're comfortable with. I know, that's what makes you extraordinary. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the ranch wake up around them. Men emerged from the bunkhouse, ready to face the cleanup. Jake organized work crews. Tom led the horses back from the far pasture, including Dusty and her foal, safe because of their midnight rescue. I should get back to town, Ella said eventually. People will talk if I stay longer. Let them talk, but I'll drive you when you're ready. Colt. She stood, looked down at him. Thank you for being patient, for understanding, for being the kind of man worth reconsidering promises for. Reconsidering, not breaking, never breaking, but maybe reshaping into something better, something about love instead of fear. He stood too, tall and solid despite the exhausting night. Whatever shape your promise takes, I'll honor it. Always. As they prepared to leave, Ella looked back at the burned barn. From destruction could come rebuilding, stronger than before. Maybe promises were like that too. Not rigid things that shattered under pressure, but living things that could grow and change while keeping their essential truth. She loved Colt McCade. He loved her. Everything else, as he said, was details. Important details, yes. But for the first time, she began to believe they were details that could be worked out with patience, love, and the kind of trust that made you run into burning buildings for each other. The ride back to town was quiet, both of them exhausted, both changed by the night's events. As they reached the boarding house, Colt helped her down, holding her a moment longer than necessary. I love you, he said simply. Whether you're ready tomorrow or never. I love you. I know, she replied. And that's why, someday, maybe soon, I think I'll be ready to show you just how much I love you too. No pressure, no expectations. I know. That's what makes it a gift, not a debt. She kissed him then, soft and sure, tasting promises reshaped by fire and faith. When she pulled back, his eyes were bright with hope, tempered by patience. See you Sunday, he asked. Every Sunday, always. She watched him drive away. This man who'd waited so long and would wait longer still if needed. But maybe, just maybe, The waiting was almost over. Not because he demanded or she felt obligated, but because love had transformed an old promise into something new, something better, something worth running through fire for. The Sunday after the fire, Ella wore her best dress to church, a soft green that brought out her eyes. She'd made it herself, of course, with careful attention to each detail. As she took Colt's arm at the boarding house door, she noticed he wore a new shirt, also of her making. "You look beautiful," he murmured as they walked. "You look singed," she replied, touching the edge of a bandage visible at his collar. "Worth it. Dusty and her foal are thriving." The church was fuller than usual, everyone eager to discuss the fire and its aftermath. As Ella and Colt entered together, conversations paused, heads turned. Their courtship was old news by now. But something had shifted. The way they moved together, the careful tenderness in how he helped her to their pew. It spoke of a deeper connection. Reverend Davis's sermon was about faith through trials, clearly inspired by recent events. But Ella found her attention wandering to the man beside her, the way sunlight through stained glass caught the silver threads in his dark hair, the careful strength in his work-worn hands, the steady rise and fall of his breathing. He caught her looking and smiled. That private smile meant just for her. Her heart contracted with a feeling so profound it almost frightened her. This was love. Not the giddy infatuation she'd felt for Duke, but something deeper, something that made her reconsider everything she thought she knew about promises and choices. After service, Mrs. Palmer cornered them on the church steps. "Such a terrible loss. The hay barn. However will the ranch manage?" "We'll rebuild." Colt said simply, "Always do." "Still, the expense. Perhaps you should consider Mr. Thornton's offer to buy the northern pasture." "Not selling." His tone was pleasant, but final. "Pride goeth before a fall, Mr. McCade. So does selling off your future for short-term gain." Ella interjected smoothly. "The Bar C has weathered worse storms than this." "Mrs." Palmer's eyes narrowed. "My dear, you speak as if you have a stake in the matter." "She does," Colt said, surprising everyone, including Ella. "Miss Whitlow has agreed to help with the ranch's books. She has a head for figures." This was news to Ella, but she kept her expression neutral. "Happy to help where I can." They escaped further interrogation, walking toward the boarding house. Once out of earshot, Ella looked up at him. "I have a head for figures." "You do. I've seen you managing your accounts, and we could use the help. Jake tries, but numbers make him cross-eyed." He paused. "Unless you don't want—" "I want—" She squeezed his arm. "When do I start?" "How about this afternoon if you're willing to miss Sunday dinner?" "Hey, Mrs. Henley will understand." They spent the afternoon in the ranch office, a small room off the main house that smelled of leather and tobacco. The books were a disaster, not through dishonesty but simple disorganization. Jake's attempts at bookkeeping looked like a chicken had walked across the pages. "This is worse than I thought," Ella murmured, sorting through receipts. "Can you make sense of it?" "Give me time, and better lighting, and possibly divine intervention." He laughed, the sound warming the small space. "I'll see what I can do about the first two." They worked in companionable silence, Ella creating order from chaos while Colt answered her questions about ranch operations. As afternoon faded to evening, she began to see the full picture of the Bar C's finances. The fire had hurt them badly, coming on top of a hard winter and low cattle prices. "You're in trouble," she said finally, setting down her pencil. "Tell me something I don't know." "I'm serious, Colt. Without the hay barn, you'll have to buy feed. That's an expense you can't afford right now." "We'll manage." "How your pride." He flinched. "That's not fair." "Neither is bankruptcy." She softened her tone. "Let me help. I have some savings." "No." "Colt." "I won't take your money, Ella. Won't be that kind of man." What kind? The kind who accepts help from someone who loves him. The kind who can't provide for his own. He stood abruptly, pacing to the window. I've worked too hard to build something here. I won't start our life together in debt to you.
Our life together. She rose too, moving to stand behind him. Is that what we're building?
He turned, catching her hands. I hope so. Don't you?
Yes, but...
Then let me do this right. Let me be the man who can take care of you, not the other way around.
I don't need taking care of...
I know.
But I need to be able to offer it.
He pulled her closer. Please understand. It's not about pride. It's about being worthy of you. You're already worthy. In here. Maybe. He touched his heart. But out there, I need to know I can provide. That I'm not just another disappointment waiting to happen. She studied his face, seeing the vulnerability beneath the determination.
You could never disappoint me.
Duke did. You're not Duke. No, but I'm still a man asking you to trust him with your future. I need to prove I deserve that trust. And if the ranch fails, if you lose everything, would you stop loving me? Of course not. Then why do you think I'd stop loving you? He had no answer for that, just pulled her into his arms, holding her like she might disappear. She felt the tension in his body, the weight of responsibility he carried.
There might be another way, she said against his chest.
What kind of way? The Garrison Ranch is selling breeding stock, good horses, fair prices. If we could convince them to extend credit, She pulled back to look at him. You said I have a stake in this. Did you mean it?
Yes, but...
Then let me help, not with money,
but with ideas, with connections, Mrs. Garrison likes me, thinks I have good sense.
You do have good sense. Too much to throw in with a struggling rancher.
My sense, my choice.
She touched his face.
Partners, Colt, in whatever way we can be, let me help you save the ranch so we can have that life together you mentioned.
He was quiet for a long moment, then nodded slowly. All right, partners. Good. Now, show me last year's breeding records. If we're going to convince the Garrisons to extend credit, we need to show them a solid plan for repayment. They worked until full dark, developing a strategy. Ella's quick mind saw connections Colt had missed, ways to maximize resources and minimize expenses. By the time he drove her back to town, they had the beginnings of a plan that might just save the Bar C.
Thank you, he said as they pulled up to the boarding house.
Not just for the help, for making me see past my own stubborn pride. That's what partners do.
Is that what we are, just partners?
No, she said softly.
We're more than that. We're
whatever two people can be when one of them is still figuring out how to trust completely, and the other is waiting with the patience of a saint.
Not a saint, he reminded her, just a man in love.
The best kind of man. She leaned over and kissed him. Longer than usual, deeper. When she pulled back, his eyes were dark with carefully controlled desire.
Ella.
I know, I'm not there yet, but I'm closer. Every day, I'm closer. No rush. I know. That's why I love you. She climbed down from the wagon, then turned back. Come for dinner tomorrow. We can go over the numbers again. Make sure we haven't missed anything. You sure people won't talk more, you spending all this time helping with ranch business?
Let them talk. They'll have to get used to it eventually.
Why's that?
She smiled. A secret. Knowing smile.
Because someday, maybe sooner than you think, I plan to be more than just your bookkeeper. Colt McCade.
Ella.
Good night. Dream of horses and ledgers and profitable years ahead.
I'll dream of you.
That too. She entered the boarding house, feeling lighter than she had in months. In the parlor, Mrs. Henley looked up from her knitting. Good day. The best. We're going to save the ranch. Colt and I, partners. Mrs. Henley's eyes twinkled.
Is that what they're calling it now?
For now, Ella admitted.
But maybe not for much longer.
Something you want to tell me? Not yet, but soon. I think very soon. She climbed the stairs to her room, mind already working on refinements to their plan. But beneath the practical thoughts ran a deeper current, the way Colt had said, our life together. The trust he'd shown in letting her help despite his pride, the partnership they were building in business and perhaps soon in everything else. At her window, she looked out at the stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. Somewhere out there, Duke was probably charming another woman with promises he wouldn't keep. But here, a better man worked through the night to build something real, something lasting. And maybe, just maybe, she was ready to stop letting the past dictate her future. Ready to transform an old promise into a new beginning. Ready to be not just Colt's partner in saving the ranch, but his partner in everything. The thought no longer frightened her. Instead, it filled her with a warmth that had nothing to do with the summer evening and everything to do with love patient enough to wait and strong enough to last. Tomorrow they would meet with the Garrisons. Tomorrow they would fight for the ranch's future. But tonight, she allowed herself to dream of a different kind of future. One where promises were kept not out of fear but out of joy. Where partnership meant everything the word implied. Where patience finally received its reward, given freely and with a full heart. Soon, the word whispered through her mind like a promise of its own. Very soon. December came again to Sable Hollow. A full year since Ella had stepped off that train into the unknown. But this December brought no blizzards, only gentle snow that fell like blessings on the transformed landscape of her life. The Bar C Ranch had survived. The partnership with the Garrisons proved profitable. The carefully managed books showed growth, and the new hay barn stood proud against the winter sky. Ella's fingers had touched every ledger entry, every calculation that brought them to this moment of security. She stood in her workshop, but it was no longer just a seamstress shop. One corner held ranch papers, breeding records, correspondence that marked her true partnership in the Bar C's operations. The quilt made from Colt's old shirt lay finished across her cutting table, a wedding gift, though he didn't know it yet. Because tonight was the night. She knew it with the same certainty she'd once known that James wouldn't wait. But Colt had waited. Through spring courtship, summer partnership, autumn harvest, and now into winter again. Never pushing, never demanding, loving her with a patience that had slowly, surely healed every broken place in her heart. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. "Come in." Mrs. Henley entered, carrying a bundle. "This came for you on today's stage." Ella unwrapped it carefully, gasping at the contents. A wedding dress, simple but elegant, with a note, "For when you're ready, no pressure, all love. C." "That man, Mrs." Henley said, dabbing at her eyes.
"How did he know your measurements?"
"He's watched me work for a year, probably memorized them." Ella touched the fine fabric, tears threatening. "It's perfect." So what? So, when's the wedding?" Ella smiled, mind made up.
"As soon as he asks me, which, knowing Colt, won't be until he's sure I'm ready."
She folded the dress carefully.
"I need to go to the ranch."
"Now it's nearly dark." "Now!" She saddled Sage quickly, grateful for the gentle snow that made the world quiet and soft. The ride to the Bar C felt both eternal and too brief. Her heart hammered with certainty, with joy, with the knowledge that some promises were meant to be transformed, not broken. She found him in the small cabin he'd built near the main house, his own space, separate from the bunkhouse, built with his own hands over the summer. He answered her knock with surprise that shifted quickly to concern. "Ella, is everything all right?" "Everything's perfect." She stepped inside, noting the neat simplicity of his home. A fire crackled in the hearth. His Bible lay open on the table beside ledgers she recognized. He'd been reviewing her calculations. "The dress came," she said simply. His face flushed. I shouldn't have presumed.
It's beautiful. Perfect.
Like everything you do. She removed her cloak, hanging it carefully on the peg by the door. Like your patience, your love, your faith in us. Ella. I've been thinking about promises. Colt. About how I made one long ago to save myself for my wedding night. How that promise became a cage after Duke left. A way to protect myself from being hurt again. He stood very still, watching her with those storm-gray eyes.
But you showed me something different, that promises can be about joy, not fear, about choosing, not hiding. She moved closer to him. I'm ready to transform my promise, to keep it but change its meaning.
What are you saying?
I'm saying that I love you, that I trust you, that I want to spend my life with you as your partner in everything.
She took his hands, feeling them tremble slightly. I'm saying that if you still want to marry me, I'm ready. Tonight, if Reverend Davis is willing. Tomorrow. Whenever you want.
Ella, are you sure, truly sure? I've never been more sure of anything in my life.
She pressed his hands to her heart.
Feel that it's been beating for you since the day you left that blanket outside my door.
I just needed time to trust it. To trust you, to trust myself. He pulled her into his arms, holding her as if she might vanish.
I have the license, been carrying it for 2 months, hoping.
She laughed against his chest.
Of course you have. But tonight, Ella, I can wait.
We don't have to. She silenced him with a kiss, different from any they'd shared before. This one held promise, passion, certainty. When she pulled back, his eyes were dark with love and carefully banked desire.
I don't want to wait anymore,
she whispered. I want to be your wife. Want to wake up beside you. Want to build our life together starting right now. The Reverend's probably in bed. Then we'll wake him. He owes us after all those sermons about patience and faith. She smiled at his expression. Unless you need more time. Woman, I've been ready since the day you walked into Henley's boarding house. He cupped her face gently. But are you ready for being truly married?
Yes,
the word came out strong. Sure. My promise was always about waiting for the right man, the right love, the right moment. You're all of those things. Colt McCade. I want to give myself to you, all of myself, freely and with joy. He kissed her again, reverent and deep.
Then let's go wake the Reverend. Wait.
She pulled back slightly.
First, I have something for you.
She retrieved the quilt from where she'd hidden it beneath her cloak, unfolding it to show the pattern she'd created from his old shirt. Interconnected circles, like wedding rings, like promises kept and transformed. It's beautiful, he breathed, running his fingers over the careful stitches. Like you. It's us, she corrected. Something new from something old, something lasting from patience and faith. They rode together through the gentle snow, the quilt wrapped around Ella's shoulders like a blessing. The parsonage windows glowed with lamplight, the Reverend still awake, perhaps guided by Providence. He answered the door in his dressing gown, spectacles perched on his nose. Colt, Miss Whitlow, is someone ill? No, sir, Colt said. We need a wedding. Tonight, if you're willing. Reverend Davis's face broke into a broad smile. Finally, Martha, he called back into the house. Get dressed. We have a wedding. Within an hour, they stood in the small church, lit only by candles. Mrs. Davis served as witness, Jake and Tom having been roused to stand with Colt. Mrs. Henley, fetched by Tom, wept openly as she stood beside Ella. Do you, Colt, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife? Reverend Davis asked, his voice warm with approval. I do. Today, tomorrow, forever. Do you, Ella, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?
I do.
She squeezed Colt's hands, feeling the calluses, the strength, the tenderness. With all my heart. Then, by the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife. you may kiss your bride. Colt, and may God bless your patience. The kiss was different from all that came before. It held not just love, but promise fulfilled, patience rewarded, trust complete. When they parted, Ella saw tears on Colt's cheeks.
Thank you,
he whispered.
for choosing me, for trusting me, for being worth the wait.
Thank you, she whispered back.
For waiting, for seeing me as more than my promise, for loving all of me, not just what I could give you.
They signed the register as snow fell softly outside, transforming the world into something new and clean. Mr. and Mrs. Colt McCade, beginning their life together on a December night that had brought her full circle but to a completely different destination. Back at the cabin, Colt built up the fire while Ella stood in the bedroom doorway. Suddenly shy, a year of certainty, of moving toward this moment, and now she trembled like a young girl. "We don't have to," he said softly, reading her hesitation. "Being married is enough. We can take our time."
No,
She turned to him, seeing not a man impatient for his rights, but the same patient love that had waited so long.
I'm not afraid, just overwhelmed that it's real,
"That you're mine and I'm yours." "Forever," he agreed, crossing to her. "No matter what."
I love you,
she said simply.
and I'm ready to show you how much.
He lifted her gently, carrying her to their marriage bed with the same care he'd shown from the beginning. The quilt made from his old shirt lay across the foot of the bed, a testament to transformation, to patience, to love that waited and won.
Are you sure?
He asked one more time.
I've never been more sure.
She said, drawing him down for a kiss.
This is my choice, my gift, my joy.
And it was. Not a promise broken but transformed. Not a duty or a debt but a celebration of love, patient enough to wait and strong enough to last. As the snow fell outside and the fire crackled within, Ella gave herself to her husband completely, body, heart, and soul, knowing that some things were worth waiting for. And he had waited. Through winter cold and summer heat, through her fears and his own doubts, through the slow building of trust and partnership, he had waited. And now, in the quiet of their wedding night, patience found its perfect reward. Not taken, not demanded, but freely given with love, the way it was always meant to be. Outside, the snow continued to fall on Sable Hollow, on the Barcy Ranch, on a new life beginning, and in the small cabin by the cottonwoods, two hearts finally beat as one. Promises kept, love fulfilled. Forever started with a whisper in the night.
I love you.
I love you too. Worth the wait, worth everything. And it was. Thank you so much for listening to this Wild West love story. I hope it touched your heart as much as it touched mine. Please share in the comments where you're listening from. I love connecting with fellow Western romance enthusiasts from around the world. If you enjoyed Ella and Colt's journey, please subscribe to Wild West Stories 1850. Give this video a like, and don't forget to hit that hype button to help more listeners discover these tales of love, patience, and frontier courage. Your support means everything. Until our next adventure in the Old West, happy trails.